Witnessing protests and rallies have been common for me since childhood. However, the incident on July 15 changed it all. I was shocked, but not surprised. It shows the deep anguish of the Manipuris for a long period of time. This time, the national media has picked up the issue of the Northeast with fervor. Today, almost everybody knows that the initial protest was against the rape and killing of a woman. But what everybody does not know is the reason behind the brutal act committed by the Assam Rifles. All the armed forces are involved in some kind of rape, fake encounter killings, illegal detentions, ransacking, or killing of civilians. So, what legitimizes these acts? The answer is the Armed Forces Special Powers Act of 1958, which has been imposed in the Northeast for the last 46 years.
This act was enacted by Government of India in 1958 as a way of legitimizing the military operation which was already underway in the Naga Hills, starting from 1955 onwards.
The Armed Forces Special Powers Act is a necessity because the army is present there. The army is present there because you have a certain situation, you have ethnic groups which have very deep-seated animosities, who are effectively not willing to live with each other, and have formed violent insurgent organizations which are engaged in violence against the state and violence against civilians.
There are a lot of myths about Armed Forces Special Power Acts shared both by the defenders as well as by the critics. The first many people say is that the act allows army to operate. It is not. The act legitimizes army to operate. Army operation is being legitimized. See, with or without the act, army was already involved in Nagaland for 3 years before this act was enacted in 1958. So it is the legitimation of the militaristic paradigm by the democratic India that we should not miss.
The announcement came on a day when student unions have called a 12-hour bandh in the hill districts of Manipur. Protesters over the past month have been demanding the immediate withdrawal of the...
I wonder why such an undemocratic act is allowed to exist. It is antithetical to a democracy like India. Our leaders at the center are very proud to be the largest democracy. But there are about 8 states which have such a draconian law. The normal life of civilians is affected due to militarization. Armed personnel are present everywhere. Frisking and questionings are routine. If you cannot reply in Hindi, then God save you.
What is the problem with the Armed Forces Special Powers Act? It only gives you this much power. It gives you the power of arrest and of reaction or response in engagement. If you read the clauses, you find that there is no overflow or excess of power. The definitions under the Act are fairly narrow. There is no power of even of detention. The greatest abuses occur if there is a power of detention, which means I can arrest someone and keep him in my custody over extended periods of time. That's when torture occurs. Now the army is required by the AFSPA to hand over in the shortest possible time, that's the language of the Act, to hand over arrested persons to the police. So they cannot actually detain. Now you will say, but they do. There are cases in which they detain, there may be cases in which there are allegations of torture. Those are illegal acts committed by individuals in uniform. And to the extent that individuals in uniform commit such acts, they are acting as criminals. They are outside the sphere of the protection of the law. The AFSPA does not allow them to do that.
Second myth is that, both the critic as well as the defender talks about abuses and excesses. The point is, it is not the abuse of the act, but the use of the act which is problematic, because the act envisions a warlike situation. The space where the act is supposed to operate, the act envisioned, is people to operate, is an alien, hostile space, not the democratic, domestic, civil space. And therefore, the use of this particular militaristic paradigm within this democratic civil space, which is problematic. So it is not used. Army people are perfectly using it effectively to use necessary force based on suspicion. For an army man in the battlefield is a perfectly legitimate principle, but not for a police officer who is operating in domestic civil space. And there the principle is minimal space, minimal force, not necessary space as that of the armed people. So in that sense, the army people are using the power and the principle for which they are trained. This act provides that. So the act is perfectly okay in itself. But why the act becomes problematic is because it is being used in a space where it is not supposed to use.
Here I am in Delhi, living a relatively peaceful life. Sometimes I fear for my family's security. What guarantee is there that they will not become innocent victims? There are many young people like me in Delhi, Mumbai or Bangalore studying and working. During vacations, we stay back not out of choice but out of insecurity.
Every village or in every part of the town,
Yes.
you have these checkpoints and you have all
Yeah.
these things. So how often do you encounter?
Oh, I have been stripped many times. Every time I go home, there will be at least, I have to get down off the bus irrespective of the weather conditions, either raining in the summer or in the hot suns. I have to get down at least 6-7 times. Suppose my coins fall down in front of the Havildar, like unnoticedly, I bend down to pick up my coin. He can shoot me on the suspicions that I'm picking up a gun. So that's the simplest possible thing that can happen to human life.
Which state does not have a problem? Every state has a problem. You go down south, you have all the terrorist groups and outfits. It's just that you make a big deal of people in the northeast. And how many people have actually get shot in the northeast?
Why do you think the media neglects the people from it?
They don't really neglect, but when they do give the northeast attention, they tend to paint a picture of terrorism in the northeast as something of the third degree.
Young people are the most vulnerable. They are suspected as potential terrorists and routinely harassed.
One of the most serious problem which I experienced really in my life, with this act is post labor, which use many local youths, to transport the goods, to transport the break, to the nearby army, station.
we should question what this national security all about. This national security is all about defending the boundary, defending the national boundary, not about the people who become part of this nation. And that is very questionable. The Indian government has never thought of giving human security.
I was amazed by the media coverage. For once, we made headlines, thanks to the brave efforts of the Manipuri women who protested against Manorama's killing. The authorities allege that she had links with a militant outfit. Then, what about the church leader Khung Sai, who was brutally killed 2 days earlier? Does anyone remember Irom Sharmila, who had been fasting against the Oinam massacre and the repeal of the act since 2000? Does anyone know that many cases in the rural areas remain unpublicized?
When we describe Manipur, we can divide Manipur into 9 groups. 4 are in the valley and 5 districts are in the hills. When we say about the geographical land, much of the land are in the hills. But why it is that when an incident happened in the valley, it is more publicized and it is more highlighted and people come to know more. But there has been many incidents in the hills, but due to language problem, due to lack of transportation and communication, this kind of incidents had been stored in a very cool place.
The central leaders weren't even aware of the ground situation at the time of the crisis. It was not until the 20th of July that the Minister of State for Home Affairs was sent, only to give a false assurance.
हमने जो नागालैंड में वहाँ जो सरकार ने फैसला किया था उसको हमने एंडोर्स नहीं किया था। क्या मणिपुर की सरकार, मणिपुर की कैबिनेट का अब हम आपको इसके बारे में जल्दी ही मालूम होगा। CCPA reviewed the situation and watching the developments.
There is obviously enough grounds to suggest that something very irregular has occurred over there. More than enough grounds. I have no doubt in my mind. Under circumstances of this nature, the local army command should have reacted immediately. First, to reassure the family, to reassure the community, and to give an assurance of justice being done. Unfortunately, this was not done by the local command, and the error was compounded continuously upwards to the highest levels in the army and similarly by the political leadership. No one has instilled a sense of confidence in the people that justice will be done. Inquiry commissions have been set up, but the conduct of the state agencies, the lack of cooperation or a pattern of obstructionism has been engaged in by the military command. That seems to suggest that there is an effort to undermine the capacity of the inquiry commissions.
When we talk of the Northeast problems, we are accused of being emotional or having emotional outbursts. But why wouldn't it be when problems in our society are close to our hearts? And our emotions are not to be confused with irrationality because facts validate it.
Northeast has never been looked by the ruling authorities in New Delhi in terms of political parameters, in terms of national parameters. They always look at this region as a space of strategic importance. It is always within the frame of strategy and militaristic paradigm that you see the Northeast. People are not looked as national Indian nationals or citizens. These are suspected, people with suspected loyalties, and they are subjects at the best, not citizens. And all sorts of reasons will be taken into account in terms of Chinese whether China invaded and they withdrew themselves, that they didn't cut off this Siliguri track of 20 kilometers, and all these years Northeast has been part and parcel of the Indian nation state, or before that, in terms of the nationalist struggle or the pan-Indian consciousness and so on and so forth. Forget about all those things, you don't care, you only like to look at it as vulnerable strategic space inhabited by subject or some people with suspected loyalties towards the country. And that is what they call it national security.
Today, conventions, rallies and protests against the Act have taken shape in major cities all over the country. Who can forget the supreme sacrifice of Pebam Chitranjan by making himself a flaming human torch to carry the movement forward? The protesters have been slapped with the National Security Act, but the movement continues even today. This reflects the genuine sufferings of the people.
When will they know all is not well? How many lives will it take? Trials and tribulations I feel.
They say the Armed Forces Special Powers Act was enacted to defend national security. But what is national security when your own people's security is at stake? What is democracy when the voices of the oppressed are being suppressed?
Looking back at a distance, I wonder what went wrong. Lonely is the path I ventured on, filled with the shadows of death. Now hope is what I rely on. Someday I might overcome. Walking down the street, I'm waiting for redemption. Looking back at a distance, I wonder what will